Hello, everyone. Welcome to Next Generation, a new show to amplify student voices. I'm your host, Jayden Cummings, a student at Embryville High School, and someone who's focused on amplifying student voices and focused on entrepreneurship. I'm here with my special guest, Rachel Peterson, and George Hofstetter, who might come in the podcast later. But yeah. Hey, Rachel.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah. So just give the audience, talk about yourself, introduce yourself to the audience real quick.
So my name is Rachel Peterson. I'm a senior at the College Preparatory School in Oakland. I've been friends with Jayden for a couple of years and I've done a couple of podcasts with him in the past. And so I'm really happy to be able to share my voice and my opinion.
Got you. So Rachel, what do you want to major in, and what do you want to build a career in the future?
Currently I've applied to most of my colleges as undecided, but I definitely want to take business or economics path. I'm currently taking econ in my high school, and I really enjoy learning about, how money is controlled, and how different public policy can affect our monetary value.
Got you. And what schools are you applying to, and what are you doing like right now that's going to help you, reach that goal and getting into the business and economics field?
So a couple of schools I'm applying to now are Georgetown University and Wake Forest. Georgetown is in Washington, D.C., and Wake Forest is in North Carolina. I guess currently I'm taking an economics class, which helps. And I've also been trying to learn the Office suite and just learning Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and also learning about Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator as well, because I think regardless of which field I go in, having those basic skills really help.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have a LinkedIn?
I do not have a LinkedIn. I've heard that I should get one though, especially going into college, because I know it's a really good networking tool. I understand the fundamentals just because my parents have a LinkedIn and I've had to help them with their accounts before. But yeah, I definitely need to get one set up.
And also, what do you know about networking, and what role does your school, college preparatory high school, play in that?
Yeah, so for networking, I definitely centered, when I was choosing my colleges, that was definitely something that came into mind. I wanted to apply to a school and also attend one that had really good alumni connections with current undergraduate students, but then also had undergraduate programs that prepare students for their graduate fields if they decide to go down that path, or just for the work experience afterwards. School doesn't really focus on networking like that. We have a strong relationship with the alumni that have graduated previously, but there's never been any sort of classes around networking. I currently take a financial literacy class, but even that is outside of my school. It's not a class that is only offered by college prep. It's a conjunction of like other schools in the Bay Area. But yeah, it's never really been a focus in my high school education, which I think it should be, definitely.
Got you. At college prep, do you guys have like many? I went to Embryville High School, and we had like all sorts of, we had like a lot of things where alumni was coming from, coming to the school, talking to current students, starting programs. An example of that is Charles Cole, who we've done podcasts with. He's came to, back to Embryville High School and, gave back to the community. And, we've had HBCU college fairs at my school. what events do you guys have at college prep?
So um, a lot of universities will send like representatives to our school to visit us personally, which I know doesn't happen to a lot of other schools. So we get mostly like we get I guess like we get admissions interviewers that will come like from Ivies or other top private schools, but not really from HBCUs. I think that also has to deal with just because there isn't a big Black population at college prep. It's a predominantly white institution. So I mean that was kind of a letdown. Because then I had to, go out of my way to go visit Howard, for example, when I went to DC or visit Spelman. Those opportunities weren't really offered at college prep. So that's in regards to college. We do have student fairs. We have this thing called CPS Day, which is basically a event hosted by our diversity and inclusion leader. And he will come and have a host of speakers that will talk about like race issues in the United States. And that's especially important now given the current political climate and like the recent events in the Asian community. So definitely our school makes sure that we are aware of current events.
That's great. And as far as your economics class goes, like, because I'm also taking economics, I'm also a senior. It's also my favorite class. I really like, understanding different, how money flows, the different economic system, capitalism, socialism, communism, etc. Um, uh, uh, do you guys what do you guys do in those classes? Do you guys do projects? Does your teacher do a good job in relating, economics to current events? Just summarize how you feel about that class.
Yeah, definitely. My economics class is pretty hands-on. In the first semester, we studied microeconomics, and then now we're on macroeconomics. Currently, we have a stock market project. So basically, on a website called Market Watch, it allows you to do a sort of virtual have like a fake stock exchange account that still works like within the market, except you're not trading actual money. It's just virtual dollars. So I mean that's good because we're able to manage our own portfolios like we would if we were actually had some skin in the game with like actual money. So I mean that's interesting. Also, but during the first semester, it was definitely more about learning about the different graphs and how supply and demand relate to one another, and then how that can affect consumers like us. So there wasn't as many big projects with that. When we did our unit on advertising, though, we had to look at the past history of different companies. I focused on Nike with the Jordan brand.
Yeah.
So that was definitely interesting seeing how pop culture, like starting new trends in pop culture is a good way to kind of set off your advertisement. So that was interesting.
That's cool. Well, has the pandemic life and has COVID-19 and this last year that we've been basically just at home, has that like changed what you want to do in the future, what you want to create a career in, etc.?
Definitely. Um, since the pandemic has happened and I've had to, I've had to learn remotely, I don't feel as engaged with a lot of my classes. Not saying that the teachers aren't putting in a lot of effort, but it's just a lot different learning from, a computer versus actually being in that environment. I think there's a lot of subconscious things that you pick up subconsciously when you're in a learning setting that you just don't get from being online. So I mean that's been really unfortunate. Also, it's just like there's because like after your classes are over, you could go and like have a little study session with your friends or go and get some food with them, and so that interaction hasn't been happening. So I mean I wouldn't say that I don't feel as enthusiastic with school, but I definitely I don't have to put in as much energy as I did when we still had online when we had in-person school.
Yeah, and I Yeah, I relate with that. I completely agree. For me, it's been, pretty tough to make the transition like all of a sudden, especially like in a junior year when we were getting ready, I'll say, to take our SATs, to start, filling out scholarships, really getting ready for our senior years. And all of a sudden, like, we got, I guess, pretty unlucky, and we had to finish the rest of the school year online, and that definitely made me a little bit less enthusiastic about school, but also gave me a lot of time to work on my own like skills. I learned how to code better. I learned, I practiced my public speaking skills and done different things. And also another thing that's like also changed what I probably wanted to do in the future is the George Floyd protest. Actually, I went to a few protests. I remember watching on TV, and ever since like that entire situation, I've been very, politically active, and I, surround myself with a lot of things with politics, and that's even had me consider to change my major to go into political science instead of something like computer science or business administration, which I was thinking of before. So it's been a blessing in disguise in many ways, but I feel like the pandemic, it also like hindered us a little bit, and we are like, we're in a special situation that I don't think a lot of adults like understand, and that's not on them because like this is something that hasn't had happened in like 100 years. So there's nothing wrong with them not understanding how hard it is, basically, but we're just in a completely, unpredictable situation.
Yeah, and I think also like on that note, I definitely do. I don't want to say I see that like you were talking about a blessing. I think something that has come to light during the pandemic, though, is a lot of injustices that are currently like still going on in America that we may have overlooked in the past, like given the recent attack on the Asian community, in the United States, and then how people are responding to that, et cetera. And then also with, the Black Lives Matter movement as well. It's just really interesting to see, how maybe like if the pandemic didn't happen, then, the way events unfolded wouldn't have happened either. So, just kind of comparing to like, oh, what was life back in 2019 versus now? I definitely think that there's a lot to, be said from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like the pandemic did put a magnifying glass on a lot of the problems with America, a lot of, of the problems as like, the fact that, billionaires have made more money than the rest of the population during COVID. Like that's something that I found interesting.
Yeah, I think like also as well, it's just because now there's not a lot of other things distracting us. Like our attention is on the social injustice right now, just because there's not a lot of other things that we can do.
That's true. That's true. And I, yeah, again, I appreciate that. I think that's a blessing in disguise. I would rather have, the truth exposed than the truth distracted from, I'll say. But yeah, Josh said something here. Could dive into the climate that has led to these hate crimes as young folks do. I think we're making progress or going backwards. Do you think we're making progress or going backwards?
Currently?
Currently.
I don't know. That's a hard question. I want to say that things are, better than they were 100 years ago. I think I don't know. I guess it depends on how you look at it, because I feel like a lot of the issues currently they're different from they were before. Before it was like, oh, you just outright can't get a job, and then now it's like, okay, we're going to discriminate against you based on like, oh, we like, oh, we don't like your hairstyle, or oh, we think that you're unprofessional. There's a lot more microaggressions going on. I would say that I believe that people are generally less racist. I think there's a lot more kind of invisible attacks that we have to deal with. So instead of someone outwardly not liking you and them letting you know, they'll do it in subtle ways. They won't hire you for their job. They won't allow you to hang out with their family members, etc.
Yeah, and to an extent, I feel like that it can be more harmful than like outward aggression, because outward aggression like is easily visible, it's easily condemnable by many people, and just which makes it easier to get change done, which is probably why more change was done in the 1960s to say than in the 2020 George Floyd protest, because like there were laws in place specifically segregating blacks as and defining them as second class citizens. That is easier to fight against than having to explain to half of the country that there's a thing called institutionalized racism that exists, and that we all benefit, or like we all are a result of history, I'll say, and some benefit more than others from history, I will say.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think that the change, back in the 60s was a lot easier to address because it was so, it was very aggressive. It was in your face. Like you knew the issues, and what was wrong. But now it's like you have to kind of change the mindset of people, which is a lot harder. Like people can like stop doing actions, but changing the way that they think and subconsciously interact with people is a lot harder.
Yeah, and so what role do you think younger people should play in all of this, in identifying and attacking these problems that we see in our country?
I definitely think young people, the role that we play is kind of educating ourselves and educating other people around us. I know that, for the older generation, once you've kind of learned ideas and you've lived with them your entire life, it's a lot harder to change. But, we're still fresh. We're still learning. We're still actively learning. And, our biases and our subconscious thought haven't necessarily seeped in like it has for the older generation. And so I think our job is to, I guess, retrain ourselves to kind of identify our own personal bias, and then also try and work with others who, may still have some bias, but just not know that one, it's there, or how to change it. That's what I would say.
Got you. And I agree too. It definitely is harder to change, like when you're 50 years old than when you're 20 years old. I agree. But another question: have you ever thought about majoring in political science, or going into politics?
Yes, I definitely thought about it. I just don't think I am the right person to, take a role as a politician or any sort of lawmaker. I believe that I don't think I'm educated enough on different subjects to engage in that fully yet. I also think that my interest in how I want to make a change in the world isn't necessarily good to be done through politics. I would rather work with nonprofits and go overseas in third world countries and help there.
Yeah. Well, we have a question from William. He said, "Hey, Jayden, what is your opinion of other student movements like the Black Organizing Project, David Hogg, and Greta Thunberg?" To be honest, I haven't heard of the Black Organizing Project or David Hogg. Have you, Rachel?
No, I know who Greta Thunberg
is. I know.
I think everyone who that I can.
And I'm pro Greta Thunberg. She's great. Yeah. But yeah, what I think about them, I think that climate change is real. And I think that what Greta Thunberg is doing is like really huge, especially to be someone under 18 to have, you know, to have such influence, millions of followers, and speaking at United Nations. I feel like that is amazing. But how do you feel about that?
No, I definitely agree. I think anyone who is willing to take a stance on such a global stage like that definitely is doing the right thing. It's just really sad to see that so many people, one, don't believe in climate change, and two, we still have to fight it, you know. And well, two, I guess, is also that politicians and lawmakers don't
Oh
either
yeah,
when there's, you know, real science and evidence that backs this up. And even if necessarily climate change wasn't a big deal as we make it today, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have a better, have a better, how do I put this? Well, like have a better environment, you know, and not cut so and not cut down so many trees, for example.
I completely agree. And Josh just said in the chat that David Hogg is the Parkland student who witnessed that shooting. I know who that
I
is.
know who he is now
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know who he is. And yeah, I remember that he was attacked by Fox News and all other types of stuff. And but yeah, I feel like he advocates for reasonable gun control, which I support. You know, I don't support, you know, to be honest, I don't support like, you know, removing guns or banning them. I feel like, you know, having, you know, each household having those is a great way of protection from the state. And if the state is only people with, you know, guns, and that's a huge disadvantage for the people. But yeah, I feel like he does good work.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing on gun control, in my opinion, is that
But Rachel, George seems to be in the chat. What's up, George?
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Thank you for having me.
hello.
How you
How are
doing?
y'all? Oh man, I'm good. I'm good. Just got back to the East Bay. But yeah, man, I'm pretty smooth. I had a nice week. Went on a nice walk and meditating.
Yeah,
How are y'all?
pretty good.
I'm
Pretty
pretty
good.
good.
Could you
Yeah,
introduce yourself for the audience?
yeah, sure. My name's George Hofstetter. I'm 20 years old, 21 next month. Founder of George Hofstetter Technologies Incorporated, Stanford University student and University Innovation Fellow, board member of Kingmakers of Oakland. Shout out them. But yeah, that's an alumni of the Hidden Genius Project, and that's where I met Brother Jayden.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, yeah, we were just talking a lot about politics and about Greta Thunberg, uh, climate change, race relations, etc.
That's a lot. Yeah, a lot of intersectionalities for sure.
Yeah, and I did want to ask you about your opinion on networking and like and basically your background on that and how you
Okay.
how you ended up you know, in the positions that you ended up in. I find very like, you know, amazing. So first question I'm gonna ask, like what is going on with George Hofstetter's Industries? Like what is going on right now with that?
Right on. So right now we just partnered with the nonprofit Kingmakers of Oakland. Out in Oakland, their curriculum is offered in 7 school districts. And they've contracted my company to build out a King's Corner mobile application for them. We got to just announce the other funding partner, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we're all working together to bring this application to the students by the fall. Outside of that, I'm doing speaking engagements. I hosted their, what is it called? Their Google sponsored tech summit in January. I'm speaking at another nonprofit called Life Courses or Life Academy, excuse me. It's another charter school in Oakland. I'm speaking there April 17th. So I think tickets are still available. It'll be all virtual. But yeah, that's really what we're doing right now. I've been having to sift through a lot of interviews to figure out what junior engineers and senior engineers I want to hire for this project. And that's a whole new thing. You know, I haven't hired more than like 2 people before. So that's a whole new process for me, having to figure out HR, contracts,
That's
you know,
huge.
payroll taxes. Like it's a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, that's all huge stuff. And in terms of like networking and entrepreneurship, like how did you get started? Was it brought up in school? Was it brought up in the home? How exactly did you, get those skills?
Yeah, it was the show, I would say, developed in my home environment. My mom definitely put me in a lot of positions, or exposed me to a lot of Black entrepreneurship at an earlier age. When when I was younger, my grandmother still owns the church right now, but she's the minister of San Leandro Unity Church. So having her just be like the boss around that shit, and then, excuse me, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to cuss or not, but she was the boss around that. So being able to see her mentorship experience religiously, like in spirituality. Okay, right on. And then my mom, she started a preschool when I was like, man, I was probably 10. She started a preschool. So her owning a business for the majority of my adolescence, I'm seeing all the stress that she had to go through, but she never answered to anybody. You know what I'm saying? So I got to see her navigate a lot of the difficulties that Black entrepreneurs face at a pretty young age. And then my grandfather, he's sort of always been an entrepreneur, a little bit at least. He was working at Wells Fargo for a pretty long time as an executive, and then was the president of Community Bank of the Bay for a few years. So growing up and then just seeing him know damn near everybody in the Bay. Like if I'm stepping out and I'm having breakfast with him, someone's saying, "Oh, that's George McDaniel." You know what I'm saying? Someone is talking to him, and then seeing that network be cultivated so young for me, I was like, damn, I gotta have that's something I wanted to aspire to be. You know what I'm saying? Being able to inspire so many folks or help so many people achieve what they want to do, specifically in the Black community and other communities of color. I realized that if my family has done it, then it's bigger than me. You know what I'm saying? I'm just the next generation that has to do it.
Yeah. I feel like in the home is where you do learn a lot of skills.
Yeah, for sure.
Generations of people before you passing those skills down, that is very, very resourceful. And I was gonna also ask you, what do you use LinkedIn or any other websites that
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I'll be on LinkedIn. I started my LinkedIn probably the first year of the Hidden Genius Project, because I remember I think it was the first tour we went on. It was the first tour at Twitter Square in San Francisco. And then it wasn't a very inclusive tour. It was all white folks. But the white folks kept telling us, you guys need to be on LinkedIn. And then I was like, fuck is LinkedIn, but I was like, you know what I'm saying? If they're telling me to do it, I might need to explore it. So I've been rocking with LinkedIn since then. But yeah, it's smooth. There's always pros and cons to it, bro. But positive exposure when you're in charge of the narrative is important.
Got you. Well, our producer also asked a pretty interesting question. What issues are most important to each of you? So you could go first. What
you said?
Example,
yeah.
When I say issues, climate change, gun control, poverty,
What
I'll guess I'll say political issues are most important to you.
Okay, I'll go a bit broader even. I think privatized education is for sure an issue. The fact that folks in Oakland aren't getting near the same quality of education as folks in Piedmont, but they're damn near in the same city. That's ridiculous. And that's not even privatized education. That's just literally having a quality public school with good resources, and then a lack of resources at a different public school. And that's all from redlining back in the day. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I would say privatized education is really disappointing. And then privatized education, what I mean by that, I mean college. Because when you go to a public school, you're sort of at the whim of the public curriculum, which for sure needs to get revamped. But at the same time, these private schools, they're viewed as a filter. The people inside these institutions are they're treating it like a filter for the exceptions or the tokens. Exactly. You dig what I'm saying? Instead of treating it like education should be a level playing field, like an equalizer almost. So that's an issue that's that I focus on a lot. Another one is just white supremacy in general. That's sick as hell. It's the intersectionalities of white supremacy, systemic oppression, internalized hatred with communities of color, police brutality, and privatized education. Like they're literally all intersections at white supremacy and a colonial mindset, like that mentality. And then if we're talking about that, then we're talking about capitalism. And then capitalism is a whole nother nutshell of like, because they just build on each other. You know what I'm saying? They all encourage the same rhetoric. So yeah, those are some of the issues that I'm trying to work on.
What about you, Rachel?
Well, I mean, after that, I don't know, that kind of touched on everything. I would say definitely, yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot. I know I definitely agree with a lot of what George has said, but I just kind of want to focus on police brutality. So I go to a private school in Oakland. It's a predominantly white institution. And it's just really interesting seeing, like George was talking about, the intersectionality between education and also police brutality. I've never seen a police officer on campus, and I know there are definitely police that patrol around like OUSD schools. And as a student, it would make me nervous to know that there's always a police on campus that is trying to catch me doing something bad. But I know that like for a lot of the other students who attend this, those don't even like appear to them. They see a police officer and they're like, oh, he's here to protect my safety, or they're there to protect my safety. And I know once you grow up in a different environment, those interactions can really impact, one, how hard you try in school, and then two, also how you interact with a lot of these law enforcements. And so then that goes back to what I was talking about earlier with police brutality. I believe that and education are really related to one another. I definitely think that our education system, like George said, needs a revamp. Private education that I receive, I know, is definitely not what a lot of OUSD students receive. I mean, it's not only about, I only have 15 kids in my classes, and I know that a lot of my friends have like 30 plus kids and only one teacher. I have a different teacher for each subject. There's a personal relationship between each of my teachers that I have that can lead me to have a really good education. There we have different services. There's a mental health service. There's a college counseling service. If I needed, if I needed to have a tutor on a certain subject, my school would give me the resources to go find one. That's especially true with the SAT. We offer at our school SAT tutoring or different math or tutoring for different standardized tests as well. And so just kind of, it wasn't brought to my attention that these were major issues until after I went into school, because before I was a student at American Indian Public Charter School, which is a part of the OUSD program or system. And I kind of thought that was the normal, like having 30 kids in a class, not really getting to know your teachers personally. But then after going to a private school in Oakland, these issues were brought to light more so. I feel like because I definitely benefit from the system, I have a role in it to try and change that. And I think that is definitely seen with the increase in college applications following the removal of the SAT requirement from a lot of schools. I know that many schools that even I've applied to, that I got rejected to have an increase in applications and a decrease in acceptance rate. And I think this shows also an economic disparity as well, because, many privileged kids like myself are able to pay for SAT tutoring and also pay to take the SAT test, and there's many people that are unable to. So when this economic barrier of the SAT is dropped, you get an increase in applicants to colleges, which I think also, as I said, speaks to a really big issue.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I'm not in favor. I've went to public schools all my life. I'm not in favor in the fact that people could pay their way to success in life. That doesn't sit well with me most of the time. But what it does is motivate me more to try harder, to build myself up way more. But checking in the comments, William said a lot of things that do make sense, like flatland schools versus hill schools. Even the geography is just like, it shows the disparity in like, the education. Kids of OUSD booted all police off their campus. That's great. I go to
Yeah.
school, so I never experienced police on the campus. But every
Mhm.
time there was a situation, Emeryville Police Department would have their entire department at the high school.
Yeah, posted outside. No cap.
Yes,
Yeah.
posted. And Sherry Anderson says, George, she asked you, do you have a mentor for your to navigate through HR for your company?
Oh, yeah. I have my accounting team has been really, really helpful. Just connecting me with folks within that like legal area. So I've had to do a lot of work around there. You know what I'm saying? It's just so important to have like workers' compensation and like corporate insurance and stuff like that. So it's a lot of stuff that you're not exposed to, especially as like a business owner of color too. You know what I'm saying? They'll tell you how to start a business, but they won't tell you how to maintain it. And they won't tell you how to like sustain it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Got you. How has your experience at Stanford been so far?
It's been cool. You know what I'm saying? It's been a lot. The exposure to resources has been great. I will definitely say they're so they do a great job of cultivating an environment on campus that like encourages creativity. Like anywhere on campus, like you'll feel like, okay, I can brainstorm here, I could work here, I could be thinking about this in a different way, or like the folks that you're exposed to as well, like they're definitely challenging your thought process a lot. But at the same time, it's like it's still institutionalized oppression, and like the white supremacy that you see on campus is sometimes bold. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes like, oh yeah, I'm a Trump supporter. This is why, and like Blue Lives Matter. But then there's the conservative like bystander racism that happens too, and that's a lot more common, I would say. But yeah, I got into my fellowship program at Stanford my freshman year of college while I was at Menlo, and that opened the sort of Stanford like bubble up, because what happens is like at elitist schools or whatever, like they have this like this gross toxic mentality around exclusivity. So it's like if you're on campus and you don't have a reason to be on campus, then other students will make it known, or like some of the faculty will like you'll get the looks of like, do you go here, like do you have a reason to be here, is there a lecture you're attending, like, you know what I'm saying? So that I didn't like at all. And in comparison to like a UC Berkeley or like a more inclusive campus that I've been to, they don't really care why you're there. You know what I'm saying? They just want to appreciate that energy and presence, and they want to figure out how they can collab and build together. Like they want to everyone sort of has I guess it's just more inclusive, foundationally, like fundamentally more inclusive. But yeah, my experience there has been dope overall. Blessed to have it. But at the same time, I want to be able to level that playing field and bring those resources at Stanford back to an Oakland and back to a Detroit, back to a New York. And I say that because, you know, in Oakland, your innovation might get called ghetto. You know what I'm saying? Like you might think of a solution to something in your community. You're like, bro, that's ratchet. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the terminology around it and the connotation is very negative. But when you're in Silicon Valley and you think of a shortcut for something that's innovative, you know what I'm saying? Like they'll celebrate that genius. There's more. There was a story that one of my professors told me. There's like this elementary school in Palo Alto. It's super like prestigious. It's a private school. And these were like Google engineers will be sending their kids, right? Basically, their kid was drawing they said draw on the table. They said draw some drawings on the table or something. And then the kid went under the table and started drawing. And then everybody else was drawing on paper on the table. But imagine being a student in Oakland and doing that. You're getting sent out. You know what I'm saying? You're going to the principal's office or something, like you're vandalizing the school property, right? But at this like bougie private school for elementary school students, they saw that as thinking outside of the box, which it was. You know what I'm saying? They saw that genius within the student to be able to understand that that is a table, but they didn't ask specifically to do it on the paper. So that level of like care, I guess, that comes with like education, I think is so important for folks of color to be able to have access to. Like we need to cultivate those environments. But unfortunately, the way it's structured right now is just not that.
Got you. In the future, like you also briefly spoke about, bringing what you had, like what you're gaining at Stanford and, at Menlo, and you want to bring that back to Oakland and Chicago and Detroit, etc. Like, how do you plan to do that exactly?
Man, it has to do with cultivating a network of folks that you trust and that you want to work with. That's the first thing I would say. Like, I have a lot of family that I have a lot of friends that I consider family within the Hidden Genius Project and Black Girls Code, and just from my own circles as well. So it's like being able to have them go to college and do whatever they're doing, and then me go to college, do what I'm doing, and then be able to still maintain that friendship and like chop it up on what we're both doing individually, and then figure out in the future where can we collaborate to help the community that we come from. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a lot of like an increased houseless population in Oakland. Food distribution is terrible right now, or not terrible. I don't want to say that, but it's just there's an issue of food distribution within Oakland, and it's like, why are we not handling that? You know what I'm saying? So just a lot of different issues that you would see in your community. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to encourage folks to reach out to their circle that they already have and then figure out how they can attack that.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say to, a 13-year-old who's innovative and feel like their innovation is being suppressed? What would you say to them?
Oh man, I would say trust your genius. I would say trust your genius. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's like an inner entrepreneur, like your inner truth. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you really want to listen to that voice as much as you can. And as you get older, it's a lot harder to trust that voice because you're like wavering. You know what I'm saying? But meditation is something that helps me a lot to stay grounded and trust my decisions. So I'd definitely say, like, at 13, I was not confident in my genius as much as like an article would say the contrary. I was so like imposter syndrome oriented. You know what I'm saying? Like waiting for an institution to validate me or waiting for like a grade to say that I was smart. You know what I'm saying? And that's never the right way to look at it. It's always you. So it's like, if you trust yourself, if you know you're smart, if you know this idea is really going to take off, then put your all into it. You know what I'm saying? Really focus on that. Because it takes 10,000 hours to master something, right? I was reading The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and that's where the 10,000 hours came from. But man, if you're putting your 10,000 hours into something that's 1, positive, 2, like productive, 3, impactful in communities that where you come from and originate from, nothing negative can come from that in my eyes. You know what I'm saying? You're just trying to change their reality for the better. And a lot of times changing your own reality with the issues that you and your family face, a lot of similar folks would have those issues.
Yeah, that's huge, bro. What about you, Rachel? What would you say to yourself when you were 13?
If I was 13, I definitely would tell myself to get more into books. I definitely did read books, but they were a lot of fantasy novels. I wish I would have read a lot of more nonfiction things, especially books around history and modern history. I definitely take an interest into that after coming into high school, but I think having an early head start on that would have been good. I also would have told myself to rely on the people that I trust more. I wouldn't necessarily say that I am a shy person, but I definitely can be reserved when it comes to important things or asking for help. And in high school, I learned that, it's not a bad thing to ask for help or to tell someone that you can't do something and need some guidance. I definitely think that is something that has held me back a lot more than it should have, just because I surround myself with people who, have a positive impact on me. So it would definitely be to, trust myself more and to ask for help when I need it.
Got you. And so this has been, the first episode of Next Generation. I hope our audience enjoyed. Do you guys have any social media that you guys want to put out there so that the audience can reach you guys?
Yeah. Plug me in, man. GH Tech Inc. On Instagram and Twitter. And my website, georgehofstadter Technologies.com. Yeah.
Yeah, well, other than that, for the audience, if you want to support this show, my Cash App is next to my name. Everything I get, I'm going to put a lot of it back into this show because, I have a passion for this and amplifying student voices. And, and it makes me feel like I'm making a change. But other than that, thank you all.
Let's rephrase that vocabulary, my brother. You are making a change. I have to give him context, man. I met Jayden like 3 years ago, and I was teaching him at the Richmond cohort with the Hidden Genius Project, man. And I have to say, not only the confidence increase, but just you being able to speak your truth to power and a platform like this is really inspiring to see, bro. Like, I really want to acknowledge and recognize you for that growth. And really being the change that you want to see. You know what I'm saying? A lot of folks are scared to do that. So I want to recognize you both for being able to like create this show. And I didn't know this was the first episode, so I'm glad I could, you know what I'm saying, start it off with y'all right.
Yeah, and thank you for being on.
Of course.